Welcome to the San Gorgonio Chapter Trail Talk series. My name is John St. Clair, and I am your Zoom host. And before we get started with our program tonight, I want to go over a few ground rules for tonight's talk. First of all, everybody except the speakers need to be muted. Um, so there aren't any background noises that are distracting. And secondly, if you have questions, you need to type those questions in the chat section, and we will eventually get around to answering everyone's questions. But some of the questions may be answered during the presentation, others will be answered after, but we'll get to them all eventually. So just write them down in the chat section so you don't forget what you wanted to ask. I also want to say that this is being recorded, and the San Gorgonio chapter has a YouTube channel. And if you registered before 2:40 this afternoon, you got an email from me, or should have, that had the link to the San Gorgonio chapter YouTube channel. So if for any reason you need to leave the presentation, you can go back later and watch the rest of it on the YouTube channel. Or if you thought it was such a great presentation, you want to share it with your friends and relatives, you can just send them the link to the YouTube channel and they can watch it as well. Now, originally, the Trail Talk series was started during the pandemic when we no longer could hike the trails. For over 2 years, Sierra Club shut down all their outings. Well, the outings are back in full force now, and we have lots of different kinds of outings, easy, moderate, and strenuous. And feel free to sign up for any of our hikes. We'd be really happy to have you join us. So tonight's talk is Welcome to Trail Talk, Our Magnificent and Fragile Deserts. And next month's topic, I am going to be producing or presenting, and it is going to be on the Cucamonga Wilderness. And I will be showing lots of beautiful pictures from the Cucamonga Wilderness, as well as talk about the Cucamonga Wilderness Patch Program, where we give away a patch if you hike all the peaks in the Cucamonga Wilderness. So that's next month. So for today's trail talk, welcome our magnificent and fragile deserts. I'm going to introduce Moises Cisneros, and he is he happens to be a San Gorgonio chapter outings leader, but more importantly for today's program, he works for Sierra Club National, and he's an organizer focusing on protecting deserts, and he was very instrumental in doing a lot of the background work to get the Chuckwalla National Monument designated, which was a big accomplishment. So, Moises, take it away.
Yes, thank you so much, John. Appreciate your leadership and your mentorship. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Trail Talk. It's wonderful to see so many of you here interested in the California deserts. And I was really connected to what people were mentioning earlier in the chat box about, one or two words that connect them to the desert. What comes up? So for many of us, it's wildflowers, solitude, night skies. For me, it's a connection to my higher power. It's truly a magical and spiritual place for me. So today we're going to be talking about the relationships between um, the elements in the desert, water, stone, wildlife and seasons, people and history, which it stretches back thousands of years. And it's about relationships. It's about our relationship to the land and what we can do to protect it. So you'll hear from five speakers, each offering a different perspective on what how they've experienced the desert, how they have been able to appreciate the desert, uh, looking at how to slow down time. The desert is a very funny place where time can slow down. And so we're going to be hearing a lot of getting a lot of amazing tips from these individuals. And we're going to be able to pause towards the middle of the presentations and do some Q&A and also some additional Q&A at the end. So please, as you're listening, please jot down your notes, your questions, add them to the chat box, and we'll get to as many as we can. So thank you again for being here. I'm going to introduce all of the five speakers and then ask the first speaker to start. So our first speaker will be Colin Barrows, and he's a Coachella Valley resident. He's a naturalist, a desert advocate, and the co-founder of the Cactus to Cloud Institute. And he is also following in his father's footsteps in terms of protecting the desert's biodiversity, researching it, and managing it for conservation. Cindy Barrows is a Coachella Valley native and the co-founder and the president of the Cactus to Cloud Institute. And she specializes in outreach into the community. She has deep local roots in the desert, and she focuses on environmental education and conservation efforts there. Both Colin and Cindy were instrumental in the outreach efforts that concluded in the designation of the Chuckwalla National Monument. Ann Ruiz is an avid hiker and the former chair of the Sierra Club San Gorgonio Chapter and the current Sierra Club California Executive Committee Chair. Karla Cervantes serves as the San Gorgonio Chapter Coordinator, working closely with partners to develop workshops, and is and grew up in the Mojave Desert. And then we have John Monsen, a consultant to Save Our Springs, where he manages their water committee. John has been organizing people to stop Cadiz, the Cadiz Corporation, and their water mining efforts for the last 8 years. And he has served on the Sierra Club National Field staff for 7 years and is currently serving as a volunteer on several Sierra Club committees. So you'll see the individuals listed here on our agenda. We'll go through the five presentations, end with some imminent threats to the desert and what we can do to take action. So with that, please join me in welcoming our first speaker, Colin Barrows. Colin, take it away.
Thank you, Moises. I think so. I'm just gonna let you know when to advance the slide. Is that right?
Yeah,
Perfect. So, yeah, welcome and thank you for having me, everybody, and good evening. My name is Colin with Cactus Cloud Institute, and when Moises invited me to talk, he kind of gave the prompt of like a favorite spring or a favorite watering hole kind of in the desert. And I thought what we'd kind of do, what came to mind for me was this part of the Chuckwalla National Monument, which Moises and we and a bunch of other people worked on really hard to make happen, and were successful last year in January to take us through kind of this trail that goes from the different springs in the Chuckwalla National Monument. We can go to the next slide. And it kind of gets at one of the reasons, one of the many reasons why Chuckwalla was important to designate, which is the history and especially the cultural history of this part of the desert. So what we're looking at here is an old kind of hand-drawn map of what's called the Bradshaw Trail, which would have been like a gold mining route that connected San Bernardino to Arizona to La Paz and across the Colorado River. And really importantly, there's two things that are kind of really important about this trail. One is that actually it wouldn't really, I mean, Bradshaw was a gold miner that trail is named after, but he didn't make the trail. He got it ready for stagecoaches, but he learned about the trail from the Cahuilla indigenous people who lived here long before that, right? So we can kind of think about it as the Chief Cabazon Trail, maybe. He's the one who told Bradshaw about it. Um, or the Cabazon Bradshaw Trail or something like that. That's another story, right? The other important thing about the map is that it connects springs. If you look at all those little dots on there, it's the Agua Caliente Spring to the Whitewater River crossing, the Palm Oasis where there's water, the Tabasco tank. So these are all, water sources. So we're gonna take a look at some of these at least. Go ahead. Next slide. Okay, so here's the map of what the monument looks like today. Um, and that Bradshaw Trail, the part that still exists, actually kind of follows right along the southern boundary of that um, monument there. So if you kind of go from the town of Mecca and head east out to the Colorado River, out to near the Blythe area, that's kind of where the modern day trail is. And the same as the old trail, it follows the water. So you can see those little blue dots along the way are the tanks and springs and watering holes that in many cases are still, have water in the desert all year round. And that's how people survived out there. It's how the animals still survive out there in what's otherwise one of the hottest, driest places in North America. Next slide. So now we're going to go on our kind of our pretend little trip. And this, like I said, we're going to pretend that we're going on this trip, but it is actually mostly a real trip that my wife Cindy and I took together as we were working on the monument, getting a chance to go out and see some of these real remote parts of the monument. So about 80% of the photos that we'll see are all from one overnight trip and hike along the Bradshaw Trail, and then some other stuff added in. And this is kind of how you would start. You'd see a sign there. You can go ahead. That's okay, Moises. I got a lot of pictures, and we kind of want to just get the vibes. Uh, we want to see, or you'll see the big BLM kiosks, and then you'll see these Carsonite markers that say Bradshaw Trail and all the various different routes that you can use out there. We can go to the next slide. And it's a nice, I would say a nice balance in terms of the designated, off-highway Jeep, dune buggy kind of routes that you can take on the what's now the National Monument and the wilderness areas where stuff is really protected. And, I think Chuckwalla strikes the right balance there in terms of having you know, no motorized access and motorized access all kind of working together. Next slide. So if we would come to our furthest west point on our kind of trip here, we'd be at a place called Hidden Spring. This is Hidden Spring in the Mecca Hills. It's a really beautiful little geological spot. You can go ahead to the next slide, maybe like the next two or three slides. And in addition to there we go, that's good. In addition to the palm trees, of course, which are this unique desert plant, we really want to think about the desert as being this biodiversity hotspot. There's a rare plant out there that's found nowhere else on Earth. That's this purple flower called the Mecca aster. And the flowers are kind of like golf ball size. It's pretty big size flower for anywhere, and especially for the desert. And then along with the flowers, like so many of these desert plants, you have not just a rare flower that's found nowhere else on Earth, but you also have this little moth here, which is also found nowhere else on Earth because it has to have these mecha-aster flowers to reproduce. So just to give you an idea of some of the kind of cool relationships there. Yeah, exactly. So then we go down the next, we travel, we hike, well, drive and then hike a little bit. We can stay here for a second. Um, and get some of the geology from the area. That's also one of the reasons why the monument was protected. You've got both the San Andreas Fault. Well, you've got the San Andreas Fault. You've got like 50 million year old volcanoes, um, old sand dunes and erosion and 100 and well, sorry, 1.8 billion year old rocks all kind of in one place together, one big place because it's a big national monument. But still, the kind of ability to see all of these things in one place is pretty incredible. Okay, well, now we can go to the next slide. This is, let's see, this one is called Canyon Spring. And you can see Sandy there. And you can see how, going back to the geology, how salty a lot of these springs are. All that white stuff all around there has to do with the faults, bringing up this salty and alkaline water to the surface. You got them, a lot of them are kind of bleached like this. And it kind of gives you a good feeling for like this really amazing geology, the kind of sparse but still diverse vegetation in the area. And we can go to the next slide. Here's what it looks like. It's not what you would want to drink, probably, but it works for coyotes and bighorn sheep, mountain lions and bobcats and all kinds of good stuff like that. From Canyon Spring, you can hike kind of across the desert and you can just see how dry the kind of inner areas between the springs are and why these springs become so important to the wildlife and to, anybody who's going along out there. You can go to the next slide. On this path from one spring to the next, we came across this other rare plant. It's this kind of prickly looking thing on the right there. It doesn't look like much other than a pile of sticks and forbidding looking leaves. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, you can see the leaves there a little better, little sharp, spiny little guys, and then we can do one more. This plant is called the Oricopia sage. So just like the Mecca aster, which is only found in the Mecca hills, this Oricopia sage is endemic, only found in the Oricopia Mountains, which is also part of the Chuckwalla National Monument. And it's in the sage family, Salvia, or sage genus even is Salvia, but and has these beautiful little sage flowers, but has almost like a cactus-like leaf that keeps the precious moisture from being chewed on by desert tortoises and animals and things like that. Next slide. And then here's the next spring, right next to those Oricopia sage. This spring is called Gucci Spring. I have no idea why it's called that, or whether it's at all related to the Gucci that we know about otherwise. Um, it's a pretty interesting spot. Next slide. And you can see a close-up of that white salt leaching out to the surface there. And again, it's not anything you or I would want to drink, but that's okay. We can go to the next slide, just kind of giving the vibe of the area and some of the wildflowers. This is a bladder pod plant that's native to the area and native to a lot of California, actually. So you might be familiar with it from the coast and from the desert. You'll be very lucky to ever see any sign of the sort of big animals out there on the landscape. But you can be very lucky to ever see the animals, but it's not that hard to kind of see the sign to know that they're there. So this is some bighorn sheep poop that I found near the spring um, on this trip that we took there. And then we can go to the next slide. I've been to Gucci Spring maybe 3 or 4 times in my life, and I saw these bighorn sheep there the first time, and then that was it. The only time I've ever seen bighorn sheep in the National Monument was this family there waiting for us to leave so they could take a drink of water. So they are out there, but they're pretty hard to find. Next slide. Unfortunately, I should mention that we do find some evidence of things that aren't the native wildlife out there or the cultural people who sort of belong there. These are like sort of one of our pet peeves are the mylar balloons. So, don't release mylar balloons. Next slide. Further along on our trip down the Bradshaw Trail, we can go to the next slide. You get to this area called the Chuckwalla Bench. And the Chuckwalla Bench area of critical environmental concern was kind of what preceded the Chuckwalla National Monument as kind of a protection for the area. But it's kind of like a paper designation. It's not quite enough for this real special area. And you can see again with all the bullet holes, there are some challenges with the people going there, not necessarily treating the area as well as they should. This was our night spent out there. This cactus in the front is called the Chuckwalla cholla, which is another endemic plant that's only found in this area around Chuckwalla National Monument. We can go to the next slide. Ocotillo with sunset. Folks are probably familiar with this plant, but it's kind of like one of those classic Sonoran Desert plants. I'll go ahead to the next slide. We're kind of coming down to one of the last few springs. This one's called Chuckwalla Spring. Um, you can see there's really not much to the spring there. It's been improved a little bit so that wildlife can still access it. We can do the next slide. There's all the water that's there in the Chuckwalla Spring. As you're going down, if you're really lucky and the rains have been good and there's things growing, we can see that Ocotillo in the background is real green, so we know that it's rained recently. You'll be lucky to see these endangered desert tortoises. I went out there we had some really nice monsoon rains, and so this was the first desert tortoise we saw, and then we can go to the next slide on one trip. And then on our next trip, we saw another desert tortoise, and this guy in particular was like a huge old male tortoise, probably 70, 80, 90 or older years old. And he's like the old man of the desert out there by himself. And it looked really, his shell was in really good condition. He was in really good condition. You can see he was eating all these little wildflowers around there. Again, these are kind of some of the things that Chuckwalla is there to protect. We can go to the next slide. Walking a little bit more down the trail. Next slide. And we came to this other type of water source, which is what's called a tank. And this one does not have a name. There's no water source. It's just a place in the rock where it's very shady and sheltered, and the water from rain is able to connect or collect. Next slide. Here's my kind of aerial view of the water source. Um, this was back in November, I think it was. Next slide. And to me, this is kind of when Moises was asking about the what deserts, what one word kind of describes the deserts. For me, it's resilience because uh, you get an animal like this, which is a red-spotted toad, which you're probably on an average day not able to find in the desert at all. But then it rains, and they come from their subterranean burrows where they're, staying safe, and they're able to come out and, mate and have tadpoles and turn into new big adult red-spotted toads, all in a very short period of time, and all just kind of taking advantage of this like brief, um, wondrous like rainfall that happens. So this was right at that last watering hole that we saw, the tank, and last fall. And this was one of probably at least two or 300 and maybe up to like 1,000 little baby, not even baby, but little red spotted toads that were all hopping around this watering hole, just taking advantage of the spring rain, or sorry, monsoon rain. And then I think we can go to the next slide, which is my last one. And our sunset as we were camped there, getting a little bit of the moon over the Chuckwalla Bench. So I think I'm about on time, hopefully. If anybody has questions, I'm happy to
Yeah.
answer. Or Moises, I think, may have some questions too.
Yeah, thank you so much, Colin. Let's give Colin an appreciation, applause. Amazing. And that's just, I'm telling you, y'all, it's just barely scratching the surface. Yeah, I have a quick question, and then we probably have like space for one before we move on. Um, Tell us a little bit about the namesake of Chuckwalla. We saw a lot of beautiful vistas. None with a Chuckwalla in it. What's your take on the Chuckwalla a little
That's
bit?
true. Yeah. So Chuckwalla, in this case, like the Chuckwalla National Monument actually goes back to indigenous names for the area and for this animal, a lizard called the Chuckwalla, and highlights not just the area and the natural biodiversity of the area, but also kind of the cultural connection that the Chuckwalla National Monument effort really sought to create. But yeah, Chuckwallas are a big iguana. Basically, there's an animal called a desert iguana that's, a different species, but the chuckwallas are a desert iguana, not the desert iguana, right? So they're big vegetarian lizards that are very cool, and that's a whole other a whole other talk. If we had 30 minutes, I'd do that one too.
Um, the next, well, quick comment. One is from Karla Cervantes. She says, "Love that the sheep are like, what are you doing here?"
Yeah.
The question is, how long did it take for you to do this particular, outing, and have you and can you lead groups on this adventure?
Yeah, so the main adventure, like I said, there was like 75% of the photos was 2 nights, so 3 days, 2 nights. There were pictures in there collected over probably 5 or more years, just for disclosure. But we do lead OHV tours out there, so I think I'm happy to share my contact info if folks are interested, or if we want to work on maybe doing something in collaboration. We love doing that kind of stuff too.
Thank you so much, Colin. I know, Cindy, your better half, also was, included in some of the photos. Please send her our best, and you're welcome to stay throughout. Be great to actually have you on board till the end, but I understand also if you've got to get going. Either way, thank you so much, Colin, for gracing us with your knowledge and these amazing photos and your experience. Take care.
Thank you.
Next, we are moving on to now we kind of just went over the Chuckwalla National Monument area. That's like what we would call the southernmost part of the desert that we're going to be going over. Now we're moving up into the maybe the Joshua Tree National Monument area and other beautiful places of the desert. And for that, I want to hand it over to our very own Mary Ann Ruiz.
Oh, thank you, Moises, and hi, everyone. Good to see so many folks that care about the desert here and love the desert. Yeah, we're going to kind of move north here to the monuments and preserve all the places that are just to the north and still part of our desert. Mojave Trails, Sand to Snow, Mojave Preserve, Joshua Tree, and then there's the Castle Mountains National Monument. So directly adjacent to Chuckwalla across the 10 freeway is Joshua Tree National Park. Over 1,200 square miles of protected land. Connected on the east is Sand to Snow National Monument, about 240 square miles. Mojave Trails is 2,500 square miles. It's the largest in the contiguous U.S. The Mojave National Preserve is another 2,410 square miles. And then there's the Castle Mountains, quite a much smaller protected area of Castle Mountains National Monument. And all these areas are protected um, because of people who understood the importance of the special places. And we're going to explore each of these just a little bit, the recreation possibilities and the presence of water. Uh, Joshua Tree National Park, when I grew up going there as a little tiny kid uh, with my family, it was a national monument. It was established in 1936. Well, that was well before I was a tiny kid, but it was still a national monument when my family went there, and was designated as a national park in 1994 by Congress. These are some of the activities that you can participate in then there, hiking, camping, stargazing. It's a dark sky park, sightseeing, rock climbing, wildlife viewing, and then the springtime is the wildflower time. Um, the most popular and highly visited of these areas are really crowded. Um, and this is a busy time of year. In this picture, you see a Joshua tree that is just about to bloom in all of its glory. And I was there just 2 weeks ago, and many of the trees in the park are blooming right now. So next slide. Uh, um, again, there's very popular areas. Highly visited ones are um, very crowded. So this time of year, a place like Barker Dam would be just a mess of people on weekends. It's a short hike. Sometimes it's full of water, like this view here this year. This was several years ago when we were there on a Sierra Club camping trip, and the reservoir behind the dam was full of water. It's a really popular hike that's only about a mile. It's easy. You go between rock formations similar to these. There's Joshua trees, pinyon pines, scrub oaks, other desert plants, probably wildflowers in the next month or so. And when I was there just 2 weeks ago, the water was, you couldn't even see the water without getting right up to the dam, and there's just a little puddle. So it varies very much like every other water source in the desert. Next slide. Yes, some of the, yeah, as I said, the popular locations are mostly along the roads, and they are quite crowded mostly on weekends, but even during the week in prime time like this in the next couple of months. Getting out on hiking trails, you'll see many more sites that you would not see if you just stay along the road and go to these places that you see on social media, on Instagram. Get out of the car, and if you're able to hike, that you can see places like this. This view right here on the left is of the Panorama Loop Trail, which is a trail that's not very, used very often. It's right near the west entrance, but there's some beautiful views along that trail. And then this next picture here is from a Sierra Club camping trip. So camping is another option there. It's great to be able to wake up in the desert and see the sunrise, to go to, to sit out there at night and see the stars. This was a stargazing trip that we took, and we're going to do this again in June. So keep an eye on the calendar for updates on, you'll see this hike posted again fairly soon for, not hike, but camp out, just one night camping in June to see the night sky. So we'll move on. One last thing about campgrounds, you have to have reservations, and they fill up quickly. You can make them on recreation.gov website. That didn't happen when I was a little kid. We could camp there as long as we wanted to and not worry about reservations. So the Sand to Snow National Monument connects Joshua Tree through over to San Gorgonio Peak in the San Bernardino National Forest. And one of the popular areas in this preserve or in this national monument, is the Whitewater Preserve. The Whitewater River flows down from the San Gorgonio Wilderness area in the National Forest into the desert. It's within the National Monument, but it's owned and managed for the public by the Wildlands Conservancy. It's a year-round water. It goes from flood stage, like in this picture, after a big heavy storm came through, and walked over to the river, and there's big pools left. To it runs all year long, and sometimes there's not much water there at all. But the preserve has hiking trails. The Pacific Crest Trail comes right through the preserve. There's a campground, there's a picnic area, big shady trees because of all the water. There are big cottonwood and sycamore trees down near the preserve headquarters. And it's a great place for water play for families in the heat of summer when there's still water flowing. Also connected in between Whitewater Preserve and Joshua Tree is Big Morongo Preserve. It's operated by San Bernardino County and the Friends of Big Morongo Canyon Preserve. It actually should say Big Morongo Canyon Preserve. I left out Canyon. You can see on the left there, this area can look almost like a jungle. It feels like you're walking through a jungle in the desert. It's, again, a place that is created by underground springs, snowmelt and rainwater that goes underground and then is forced up by the Morongo Fault, which acts kind of like a wall down below in the mantle of the earth, or the crust of the earth, and pushes the water up into this unique area There's a nice boardwalk that you can walk through the preserve. You can see on the right there from a distance, you're looking at the desert, and then there's suddenly big cottonwood trees and willows that are a sign that there's water there. It's really a popular place for birding during migration season and is well known around the world really as a birding location. So that gets us up to um, one of the two biggest national preserves, and this one, the Mojave Preserve, is operated by the National Park System, so it is within the National Park System. Um, it includes the highest mountain in the Mojave Desert, which is Clark Mountain at 7,930 feet. There are actually 9 different mountain ranges within the preserve. There are lava fields, a lava tube, and many special features that are, and these huge vistas like this one on the left uh, of looking across the preserve. And then the one on the right here is as are the next 3 photos, courtesy of our one of our members and professional photographers, Gary Newman. I gotta give credit where credit's due on these photos of some of the dunes and mountains there. This is another of Gary's photos of being there in the evening and watching the sun go down, which or the come up. I'm not sure which it is in this particular one. I think it's sunset. Watching the sun go down and the moon come up is pretty special. This is a picture of the lava tube, exploring one of the lava tube there. And then the next one I think is hiking around on the sand dunes. Kelso Dunes there in the preserve is a very popular spot to go up and hang around the sand dunes. These are a few more of the estimated 300 to maybe even 700 species of animals that live in the Mojave Desert, and around 2,000 species of plants. And they all depend on water and very specific relationships, as Colin mentioned, about, a specific moth that needs a specific plant. The Joshua trees need a specific plant, a specific moth to pollinate and continue their population there. So we'll move on now to Karla and talk about threats to these areas. So Karla, take it over.
Thank you, Marianne. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So I wanted to share with you all this gorgeous sunset photo that Marianne shared with me. So I lived in the high desert in the Victorville and Apple Valley area for a few years. My family decided to move there from Los Angeles. I had this huge misconception, as many people do, that the desert was barren, that there's nothing up there, which is of course false. I learned quickly that it's gorgeous habitat. And this habitat is home to various species of unique plant and animals that we saw. And I remember being so angry because my neighbor mentioned that across the street from our property, there were some teens around my age that were destroying Joshua trees to clear it out to make space for a bonfire area. It just really upset me because, of course, desert wildlife is so important and this ecosystem is very fragile, needs to be protected. So next slide, please. Yes. So something you cannot see in this picture, but I wanted to talk about is the Bonanza Springs. So Bonanza Springs is beneath the California Desert. There's lies an aquifer, and now this water didn't fall last winter, even in the last century. The water slowly has accumulated underground thousands of years ago during wetter climates and has been stored there ever since. Next slide, please. So the coyote and the desert bighorn sheep depend on the Bonanza Spring due to it being a resource for fresh water. Now, water is life anywhere, but this rings especially true in the desert. Water supports life in one of the most challenging environments on Earth. Protecting these environments means protecting the water resource. Without water, these beautiful ecosystems can be lost forever. So here they are again. They migrate and they use the Bonanza Spring. This is probably the most vital resource of fresh water that they have. And we see them here, the horned sheep, the ewes, and the lambs. This spring provides necessary hydration for the bighorn sheep, especially during hot, dry periods. And I wanted to share some facts on Bonanza Spring. So it's located in the low foothills of the Clipper Mountains, and the Mojave Natural Preserve is just north of Bonanza Spring, and Joshua Tree National Park is south of the spring. No, go ahead, next slide, it's okay. So Cadiz Inc. is threatening our magnificent and fragile desert. And here's what you can do to help protect our desert. So the Cadiz Inc. Corporation owns 34,000 acres of land within the Mojave Trails National Monument. Most of the aquifer it will drain is under protected public land. So the dot there is Bonanza Springs. So the aquifer contains water that's been deposited 10,000 years ago, and it recharges very slowly. It's far slower than what Cadiz wants to pump it out. The spring has a recorded flow of water of approximately 10 gallons per minute. When it starts to gargle up, it comes out. The sound it makes is really magical. It's such a blessing for desert wildlife. Spring also acts as a desert oasis, sustaining a deep-rooted plant community that is reliant on its specific groundwater system. Next slide, please. So this is just more of a map of where Bonanza Spring is in relation to Cadiz, and underneath that specific land parcel, that is the corporation Cadiz Inc., and they own that land there. They bought it specifically for the water that is underneath it. And so they own 34,000 acres of the land, and most of the aquifer they are planning to drain it. It's under protected public land. This development threatens to pump far more water than is naturally recharged in the aquifer. This corporation is aiming to profit off the water and deplete this vital resource for these magnificent species. So, the next slide, please. The Cadiz Inc. project, it aims to pump 16 billion gallons of water annually, and the corporation claims that this project will not have an extreme effect on the desert, according to them, because the water will be replenished by rain. And now we don't need to be experts to understand that these claims are ridiculous, because it does not rain often in the desert, and water would not be replenished enough to be able to keep Bonanza Spring intact for all the wildlife it serves. So here we have a map that shows, we have an illustration here, and we can see that the desert bighorn sheep is drinking out of this spring. It helps tons and tons of wildlife here. And we see that the groundwater flow, what it's like before the extraction that Cadiz is proposing. Historical data also indicates that the spring's output has remained consistent for over a century. Even during droughts, this is a reliable source of water for desert wildlife. And brace yourself for the next slide, because it's pretty bleak. So here's the impact of the Cadiz project. It will be pumping out a lot of the water for profit. So much so that the water level has been depleted enough to not be able to feed the spring. And I wanted to mention the illustration here again with the desert bighorn sheep. The desert bighorn sheep would simply not be there if this project goes through. Instead, there will be just the skeletal remains. The way in which Cadiz Inc. plans to extract this water is removing it up to 25 times faster than it is naturally replenished. They're trying to mine a resource that is simply not able to renew itself, and this will cause significant damage to this area. The way that this development is being framed to the public is really concerning. Depleting the natural water resource will harm this ecosystem in ways we cannot imagine. And this corporation has been trying for a long time. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to John Monsen to explain more about this irresponsible development.
It'll probably
John,
be better with the audio. Can you hear me now?
yes.
Thank you. Okay. The corporation was originally founded in 1983 by Keith Brackpool, And Brackpool, I won't really get into the Securities and Exchange Commission issues that he had in London, but he was very prescient in recognizing that there was water under the desert and bought the 34,000 acres. Uh, their assumption was that the abundant Colorado River water that ran by nearby in the Colorado River Aqueduct would also be available for them to put down into the aquifer. So the original concept was really a bank, which would have deposits and then have withdrawals. But we all know what's happened to the Colorado River and where it is now. So in 2009, they totally switched their model to just extracting water. But that wasn't their original vision. And when you extract water, you get just what Karla was talking about. We've been fighting this project since the early 1990s. A few of you might know well of the story of Eldon Hughes, who was the first Sierra Club person to try and protect this area with the Desert Committee. And in fact, if you look at all of the areas we've been talking about, the Sierra Club played a significant role in protecting all of them. And that's, of course, what we want to encourage you to help us do today. So I just did a little, yeah. So this is one of the things that one of the studies that helped undermine Cadiz's position. The U.S. Geological Survey studied the amount of rainwater and recharge and made an official finding that it was extremely low. 2,000 acres to 10,000 acres, with 50,000 potentially being taken out. Um, And this is the Cadiz Water Bank in my vision, which it takes no deposits, but only allows withdrawals. I wouldn't invest in that bank. But uh, we should mention, yeah, let's stay there for a minute, that there are, in addition to the water threats, are threats to sacred waters. So we have 46 environmental groups and a large number of tribes opposing the project. There are threats of land subsidence. When you lower an aquifer, there are many areas that could collapse, and there needs to be, of course, pipelines and other equipment that come out of the inholding to distribute water. Cadiz hopes. And so we are now entering, I don't know, it feels like we're in the 14th inning of a baseball game. I remember I watched recently, a year ago, the game that the Dodgers played against the Toronto Blue Jays. It feels like the same thing. But we're winning some, they're winning some. Yesterday, there was an announcement that the administration, the EPA, what is left of it, is inviting a $150 million proposal from Cadiz to help underwrite loan money for them to advance their project. So with a friendly administration, Cadiz will do much better at the national level. It is blocked in some ways in California by California state law, which says that it can't do any harm to the desert. It has to apply to the state for permission to operate. And those standards are very difficult. So Cadiz needs to find a way to undermine those. It has had a great deal of trouble finding any customers in LA County and only has one in Orange County. And so they've recently announced that due to social justice reasons, they want to invest in areas that are closer to them in San Bernardino County. So what they've done is they've retreated to areas where they think they can get customers. So the battle is on now for them to sign customers with water agencies and for us to tell water agencies what Cadiz is actually like. So the battle has come to your backyard. And so we need your help there. This is really an exciting moment. We always think we're a couple of years away. Cadiz is losing immense amounts of money. Most of the money it's getting is from loans. And so if they don't start up their business very soon, uh, they're not going to be. So we need your help in working the agencies, decision makers, and other people in your neck of the woods on Cadiz. So I will now turn it back to Karla to tell how you can help out.
So our allies have fought for the protections of desert lands, and we're not alone in this fight. It isn't over. We need you to speak up and take action. The desert wildlife need you to keep the pressure and take a pledge to help us protect this magnificent land. If you scan the QR code here, you can take the pledge. So these type of harmful developments, they don't quit, right? But neither will we. We ask you all to sign the pledge to help protect our beautiful, magnificent desert. Every voice, every single action, it does make a difference. If you hear your friends, for example, talk about going up to Joshua Tree, mention Bonanza Springs, and the corporation that threatens desert animals, and the fauna, as well as the opportunity for us humans to recreationally enjoy these spaces. And it's not to create this feeling of doom, right? It's rather that the desert is beautifully balanced, and we all have the power right now to make a difference in protecting it. So if you scan the QR code or sign up with the link, we will send over, we're going to send over a link later. We ask you all to pledge to protect our deserts because Cadiz Inc. is not going to quit, and neither will we. We know that your time is important, and we so appreciate each and every one of you taking the time to attend this meeting. Together, I know that we can make change, and we look forward to standing with you in this fight to protect our desert wildlife and the precious biodiversity that is there.
Thank you so much, Karla. Let's give all of our speakers a big round and just send them good energies, good vibes, and
Thank you.
appreciation for their work. We'll go ahead and take some questions. I've seen Chris has her hand raised for some time. Chris, you want to go ahead and come off mute and just chime in.
Sure. I had some questions about where the process is for the NEPA and the CEQA.
Sure, I can take
John?
that. Yeah, NEPA is still at the federal level, and we expect the Trump administration, Trump 1, went through the process very quickly at the end of the administration, and the courts threw it out because it was not adequately done. They didn't decide whether it was right or wrong, just it wasn't adequately done. The Biden administration did nothing about it and sat on it, which would make some sense. And then Trump they're reinitiating the NEPA process.
So I'm confused because usually CEQA would be the state because CEQA
Yeah,
is
so we hadn't
state
mentioned CEQA yet.
requirements.
So
And
CEQA
then
was
NEPA, sorry, there's you have surrounding land around there too, which is BLM, which would have a voice in that as well under NEPA.
yes. Well, let's go back to the state process because it's kind of interesting. Uh, could these the process started in 2012 and ended in 2016. And what happened was that Cadiz picked as its principal agency not San Bernardino County, but a water district in Orange County, which is Rancho Santa Margarita. Now, they had already signed a contract with Rancho Santa Margarita for heavily discounted water. So they had as the lead agency, an agency that had a large incentive to see them successfully complete CEQA. The company that did the water measurements for Cadiz ended up being picked as the construction company for their pipeline, and their study of of rain picked a high desert area that was had the most rain in 3 or 4 years. And so they picked the largest possible number you could get for rainwater recharge and then claimed that was typical. So they really maneuvered the process really well. And they passed it. And then the courts basically said in our lawsuits, hey, look, we can't judge the science, but they did do all the steps involved. So that after that, that's why the state of California passed a law, SB 307, that said, hey, when in the desert in Southern California, when you want to wheel water out, sell water out of an area, you have to get state approval. And that is one of the things that's blocked Cadiz is that the standards in the state law are higher than CEQA, and they've never even filed yet because they think they can't meet the standards. So that's one key thing where they have to find some way to get around California state law.
Thank
So
you,
they
John.
won
So,
on
and
CEQA,
then,
Thank you,
but
John and Chris. I'm going to have to move
yeah,
us on. Definitely
that's fair enough.
this is meant to just get you interested in the work ahead. Thank you, Chris, for that question, John, for that answer. Joan, I think I saw your hand up. Did you want to chime in, or was it? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just to say so much credit to John Monsen, who in Angela's chapter, who've worked so hard on this, and now the developer is turning to San Bernardino County. This is in our backyard, and so our chapter has to rise to the occasion, and I know we will. Karla will be great, and John, wonderful mentor. I also just wanted to say, as he mentioned, Eldon Hughes, some of the great leaders that put together the Desert Bill in 68 wilderness areas, that many of which are in the Chuckwalla. And they had a great staff person, Bob Hattoy, who went on to do many other progressive things. And I think we've got a very great national staff person too in Moises Cisneros, who really became the face of the national monument for us, the Chuckwalla. So thank you, Moises.
Thank you so
And
much.
Jones played an extremely important role too.
We're all on your shoulders, Joan. Appreciate you. There was a question in the chat. Where are the San Bernardino County supervisors at, or any of the supervisors in, the surrounding counties? Where is there? Do they play a role?
Yes, I'll give a 3 sentence answer this time rather than 3 paragraphs. They're business oriented and they are pro Cadiz, and they monitor they have to give some approvals on the base some approvals from the county, and they have.
Awesome. Well, a lot of questions about how do we get activated? What do we do? How do we, how can we support the protection of these areas? Please, 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 uh, add your name to our action team, as we're going to be calling ourselves, in the protection of Cadiz, or the Bonanza Springs, and making sure that we stop Cadiz from moving forward. Add your name, or send John or myself or Karla or any of us here at the Sierra Club an email letting us know that you're willing to help us. Every individual has something to contribute. Whether you're interested in writing to a local elected, showing up at a hearing, maybe you're creative and you want to use some of your creativity through art. Maybe you're a writer. I mean, there's so many different things that you can do to help. We really appreciate your time. I want to say a special thank you to Marianne, who's this was her idea, her baby, her brainchild, to bring this to you in this way through all the different speakers. I want to thank John St. Clair for being the rock here, and bringing this to you, and all of the work that he's going to be continuing to do through future trail talks. Thank you for joining, y'all, and have a beautiful, great rest of your night.
There are still some people who didn't get questions answered, though.
Well, it's 8 o'clock, right? Is that our
No, we can
program?
go past. So, Steve Farrell asks a good question. Where does the current most pertinent approval lie today?
All right, John.
Yeah, so there are a couple of them, Stephen. Good to see you, by the way. Um, the Cadiz is trying to sign up water districts basically from Barstow to Victorville, and then some south. And so they have letters of agreement and they have memos of understanding, but they haven't really signed full contracts yet to get water in a lot of these agencies. So one of the things we want to do in your area is to keep working with the water agencies, talk at public meetings, call in, do other things that let them understand Cadiz better and the public's concerns. And so that can influence them. We want to keep them from getting full contracts for Cadiz water. And the second thing would be protecting the state legislation, but there's no threat right now. And the third would be, even though the federal processes are kind of stacked against us right now, there will be comment periods and other things that we should react to. So all those different levels. Op-eds, editorials can help too, locally in Victorville, DeBarstow. Joan has some ideas too.
Well, my notion just is there anybody on this call who doesn't want to be involved?
There
They
you
can
go.
come out. I mean, because people may not take that extra step, but can we utilize these people who've, been a little educated?
Absolutely.
And
We'll be following up with everyone regardless. We've got
and
your
local
contact
people are
info.
the key. So if I can just get that in, meaning you're local and people will listen to you.
We have everybody's email address who registered, and we will be emailing more information, right?
We
Yes,
absolutely
we will. Yes.
Well, listen, we start on time and we end on time. It's 8:01. Thank you so much for your participation, everybody. Be sure to look out for an email and ways to get engaged with us. Again, thank you all so much. Have a great night.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Love your photos as usual, Marianne.
Oh,
Great
thank you,
travelogue.
John.